think is a little crazy, but is also why I love being in the startup world and meeting people that are so okay with taking that journey and taking that risk. It probably wasn't the most positive experience because it was a really tough boarding school, but I think coming out on the other side from those, you build resilience, perseverance, and you can apply that to any part of your life in the future. Running is absolutely blowing up in Australia right now. Everyone and their dog is running. It's so timely, our solution, and we've got to leverage that, because I think what I've realized as well, you can have an incredible solution, but if it's not the right time for the market, you can get really caught up. Things these people are doing, like creating such far-fetched solutions sometimes, and actually putting it into reality, like they're making these happen. You have to be okay with failing. I wrote like an article on LinkedIn, and it was a highlights reel of my year, and I was reading it and I was like, hang on a sec, there was a lot of things in between that didn't really go to plan.
That's what this podcast is about.
And did not go right.
Keriana King, welcome to the Fail Wisdom podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, and thank you for having me, because we're here at Fishburners and you are the community lead here at Fishburners.
Yeah, we're super lucky to have a podcast room. I think lots of startup founders and people interested in startups, podcasts are so valuable to talk about your stories, talk with other people and have them sharing their stories. There's so much power in podcasting, and we want to support that.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that support as well. So, Fishburners, so unusual name. How did that come about?
That's a really good question. One I had when I first joined Fishburners. So on one of the first ships that came to Australia, the ship was called Fishburners, and essentially how we got the name to this innovation hub is that they bought all these new supplies, all these new thinking, all of these different things that they were bringing to this new land. And that's essentially what startup founders are doing in every space that they're trying to solve problems in and bring innovative solutions. So that's where the name Fishburners comes from a humble boat back in the day.
Yeah, interesting. It'd be interesting where the name of the boat came from as well, wouldn't it? But
I don't have that answer, sadly.
Okay. So you've had an interesting journey from studying law and commerce, I think Macquarie Uni.
Yes.
And then becoming the community leader here, and you've been in charge of women's groups, and looking at LinkedIn profile for a young person compared to me, you've done a lot already. So tell us a bit about that journey.
Yeah, I think because I went to a boarding school in New Zealand, there weren't a lot of opportunities there, and it's just a much smaller place. I love New Zealand, but the older I got, the more I felt like a caged bird. And so as soon as I came to Sydney, and it's so many opportunities here, there's so much to do. People are just different. I think they're just built different here. And so as soon as I came...
We're crazy here.
See, it's all about perspective, right? So one might say crazy, one might say geniuses are built here. And so I
think crazy and genius are two things that go together to describe a founder of a startup.
Well, I agree, because you've got to have a bit of both. You've got to be a little bit crazy to go out there, leave the comfortable, maybe corporate job or something that's going to give you a really fixed income. And that's a really safe choice, to go out there, throw it all to the side and go, you know what, I'm going to make my own path. I think it's a little crazy, but is also why I love being in the startup world and meeting people that are so okay with taking that journey and taking that risk.
Yeah. So tell us about that experience in the boarding school in New Zealand. So is your background from New Zealand, or did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, yeah.
New Zealand, or is it like here? Or did you grow up there as well? And how come you ended up at a boarding school in New Zealand?
Yeah, so I grew up in Sydney, but my dad is Maori, so from New Zealand, and my parents really wanted me to learn about my culture, and there's just not a lot of opportunities in Sydney to get in touch with your culture. And I think learning about yourself and really understanding like how your ancestors got there and what makes you you is really important. And I didn't know that till I went to boarding school, until I got to explore that. The Maori culture is so beautiful. We did a lot of the language. We did kapa haka, which is cultural dancing. And for a young girl that had been brought up in Sydney to say, I didn't even know the Maori people actually had a language. So that's
Really?
how, I guess, uncultured I was back then. And yeah, I think what I learned from that is, you know, sometimes you just got to throw yourself in the deep end. I had no idea what I was getting into. It probably wasn't the most positive experience because it was a really tough boarding school. But I think coming out on the other side from those, you build resilience, perseverance, and you can apply that to any part of your life in the future.
Yeah, resilience, perseverance, they're common traits that I hear all the time from startup founders, key traits that you need because it's such a difficult journey, So
Absolutely.
maybe that's, where that originated from with you, do you think?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I must say, I feel like I had a pretty comfortable upbringing. Like, my parents were amazing. I was an only child.
Yep.
And it was probably only when I was thrown in the deep end there, pretty much everyone was Kiwi and had a really Kiwi upbringing, which I just hadn't had whatsoever. And I think that really pushes you to find something inside you and also ask yourself a lot of questions as well. I'd only known one way to live my life, and I guess being thrown in the deep end, and I was so normal in Sydney, and then I was sort of an outsider. You start to question a lot of things, and I think as well, like, it sort of made me understand myself a lot more. I think resilience and perseverance can only be built in practical situations, as much as that sucks, because no one wants to have, I guess, negative experiences or really tough times. But in the long run, and that's what I always say to myself now, it's okay, it's for the long process, it's all going to be worth it. So I think that's the good part that I got out of my boarding school experience.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, yeah, we go for all different experiences, and it's what we take out of that that's important, isn't it?
And you've got to be intentional in, like, really taking on those learnings, because if you're not reflecting, it's sort of, you might fall into that trap once again. So you've got to be intentional in your growth journey.
That's interesting. And it's really important to understand your cultural roots as well, I think, and having those sort of communities is really important as well, and to understand them, the community, that your background as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes you, and that's a really special thing, and that's something no one can take away from you. They can take away, like, physical things and monetary things, but they can't take what makes you special away. And so understanding what does make you special, I think, is such a crucial part of life.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And we're all unique, and we're all special in different ways, and that's a really positive way to look at it, and I think that's important as well. Like, even with my podcast, sometimes I thought, well, I look at some other podcasts, like really big ones like Diary of a CEO, and I think, oh, that guy is so smart. But I think, hey, you know what, Paul, just be yourself. You're unique, you're different to other people, and that's what matters,
And it's all imposter syndrome, I think, as well. What you actually realize is probably the Diary of CEO podcaster wakes up some mornings and thinks, I'm just not good enough to do this. And then you actually realize when people aren't around other people that we're all kind of thinking the same thing, and that at the end of the day, no one really cares that much about how you think people view yourself.
Exactly.
But they're so caught up in themselves that it's sort of like you've just got to do what makes you happy.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to be yourself, be authentic, and that's, even in the startup space, that's what people appreciate, You don't try and be something that you're not. I think it's really important. Okay, so brought up here, you went over to boarding school and you came back, and then what was next in your journey?
Next step was university. So I'm studying a Bachelor of Law and Commerce, majoring in entrepreneurship. To be honest, I chose entrepreneurship because I hated finance and accounting subjects.
I'm with you on that.
And when I looked at the units, I was like, ooh, this major doesn't have a lot of that. maybe this will be the way that I'll be able to get through this
Right.
commerce degree. But there wasn't a lot of, I guess, reasoning behind it that I wanted to become an entrepreneur or anything like that. To be honest, I would say the business models you learn at uni and all the theory is great, but there's nothing that can compare to actually going out there and doing it. And so as much as I have loved university, I get really excited, like being able to practically use the skills every day, like starting companies, working at Fishburners, and doing all the other things in my life, like being the vice president of the Women Entering Business Society. I would say university is such a small facet of myself now, but I used to surround my whole sense of identity around it. But I think as I've learned and grown, I've sort of outgrown it, I would almost say. But I'm still doing it part-time for my mum, otherwise she'll kill me. So
Hi, Mum.
I will graduate from it, I promise.
But
yeah.
in the year 2050?
Please no.
It's still a graduation.
Please no, it's still a graduation. Well, as long as you get to the end, it counts.
Yeah.
I'll be graduating end of next year, so
Okay.
that'll be a happy relief.
Yeah, it sounds like you know, it's like it's not exactly like. Why did you choose that degree? Was that your mum as well?
No, actually, I chose the degree, but then she fell in love with the vision for it. And I would say the reason I chose that degree is economics was my favorite subject
Okay.
at school. I also was really interested in statistics, which looking back, I don't know why I thought that, because I definitely don't feel that way now. And additionally, like English was always a strong point of mine. Things like maths and science, you know, like calculus, but it never came to me very naturally.
Yeah.
So it made sense for me to choose that pathway, and
Okay.
it also was quite a safe pathway. And for, I guess, an 18-year-old, I was like, yes, safety. You can tell everyone you did this degree. People won't sort of put pressure on you to get a job or anything, because that's a safe path.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's not exactly a typical entrepreneurial thing, isn't it? Taking the safe path. It's like the opposite of that. So now you are the opposite of that, and you're doing amazing stuff. So I'm on a mission to help early stage startup founders. So I'd like to ask you one thing, and that is to subscribe or follow my channel. This helps the channel to grow and in turn to help early stage startup founders on their journey. Tell us about your experience here as a community lead. Like, we were just upstairs before getting a coffee here at Fishburners, and you say, yeah, there's an event happening here, this floor, there's one happening downstairs, and you're part of organising all that, meeting amazing startup founders all the time. It must be an awesome job. Like, tell us about that and what you're learning from that. And
Yeah, I actually feel really blessed and lucky to be a part of this community. I think founders, they're just built differently. Like I said about Sydney, people are built differently. But I think the things these people are doing, like creating such far-fetched solutions sometimes, and actually putting it into reality, like they're making these happen, they're bringing revenue in, and it's just so inspiring to me. In terms of my role here, I feel so lucky because I get to create a positive impact on the community, doing things like events. Like today we're partnering with the National Stock Exchange of Australia, and we're doing a panel all about revenue roadmaps and, you know, getting your startup dreams to a profitable dream
important
as well,
area.
which is such an important dream. And from having, the reason this event came about is I've had a lot of conversations with startup founders in our space, and hardly any have an accountancy background or finance background. And I think of me too. And I think, you know, a lot of them are just winging it. So if we can bring people that, you know, their whole life surrounds finances, that's exactly what we want to do. And we're trying to bring those resources to them so they can focus on their startup dreams.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's something I've learned now interviewing over, I think, 45 people on the podcast is having a business background is a big advantage. And if you don't, then there's a lot of learning. There still is a lot of learning because the startup is different. You're selling a future idea, but, you know, and I was so weak on this, but understanding the financial side and, you know, looking after that. Lucky I had a co-founder that did that. But so if you're not good at that, have somebody that is.
Find someone, that can do that.
Yeah. And so talking about co-founders and that, so you also are the co-founder of ActiveMate, and I've just recently, as in half an hour ago, interviewed your co-founder, Arthur. And so tell us about that and how that came about, how you got involved with that.
Yeah, so we did the StartMate Student Fellowship together, and there was about 200 people doing that fellowship, and we just happened to fall into the same breakout room together and talking about things we were both passionate about, and we found alignment, and it's sort of like a 1 in 200 chance that was going to happen. And so I feel really lucky to have found someone equally as passionate in the same space, but brings such a different skill set, because that's the thing I've learned. You really need to find co-founders that have different skill sets to you. There's no point bringing someone else that can do the same thing as you, and then you're stuck with this gray area of things you guys can't do together, and you need to outsource that and pay people to do that. Yeah. And I think what I've realized is having that technical person, and as you mentioned, the importance of a business background, like having those two is the key to success. I've been the program manager of the Ascent project, which is an accelerator and incubator program in partnership with Westpac. And there was so many incredible ideas that unfortunately the founders don't have a technical background, so you get quite stuck. You have these incredible visions and dreams to take it, and they're able to sell it really effectively, but if you don't have a product, most investors won't talk to you. They need to see something tangibly so you can effectively test it. And I think that's why it's so important in that early stage, finding someone that complements you, not sort of replaces you in the team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so with Arthur and yourself, what different areas do you guys bring, and how do you complement each other?
Yeah, so he has a focus on the running side. He did like a 100K run, as you do, a few months ago, which I most definitely couldn't do. Whereas I'm a PT, so I have the experience in the gym side. So whilst they don't complement each other now, our vision in the long term, they will be able to complement each other. His background, he's a serial entrepreneur, so he's built businesses before. He has a marketing background and a growth background. So important. You've got to put it in front of the right people to get your customers. And then for me, I have a human resources background, so I was in charge of like our internship program. Studying law, I was able to create majority of our contracts and do a lot of legal research to make sure we're not going out of line and staying within the legal lines, which I think it's so hard. I meet so many founders that don't have a legal background, and it's so important to like safeguard your business early rather than trying to pick up the pieces down the track, which makes it so much more difficult.
I mean, look, I put myself in that category. I was just like, I'll just do it all later. But my co-founder, she was more meticulous. She said, no, we have to get it right. And, so that was a good balance as well.
And that's the thing, like it's all about balance. Like our other co-founder, Adam, he's on the technical side. So he's currently building our AI model to actually, put out the program to our people, but it's sort of, you've got to have all of the pieces in the machine. I also have experience in sales, so I'll probably be the one talking to the customers. And so you need all of those pieces to make the whole machine work. And I think what we've also realized is Adam's quite meticulous and like quite risk averse, so he's always checking everything, always making sure everything's all good before we take something out, whereas Arthur is just like, let's just try, and who cares if we break it. And it's such a good balance to have, because if you're both on one side, that probably won't work. And I'd say I'm probably in the middle, so sort of as like a middle person. So we all sort of like bring our own strengths and are able to like leverage, our personalities effectively.
Yeah, I was actually talking to him about that, and I said, why don't you get like that beta group you've got and just get them to use it, and then get user feedback as you go. And so he was sort of talking about that balance as well, you know. So I sort of get what's going on there now.
Yeah, it's like it's sort of like a relationship. I feel like co-founders, like got.
They say it's like a marriage sometimes.
It is like a marriage.
You're with
and like
24/7.
Well, that's the thing. Like you're probably with them more than your partner sometimes, and I think you're also having to like ask each other like really hard things and make really difficult decisions. So I think being able to communicate effectively with those people and understanding them. We took a lot of time in the beginning just asking each other questions, making sure that rapport was built up, like how we like to be talked to, what communication style works best.
Really important.
And like how to contact, like just the little things, even like how to contact us, what our boundaries are, all of those things.
Yeah.
So really like a relationship.
Yeah, that's so important. And if you neglect that at the beginning, you can have, like a lot of founders have problems with each other later on if they don't really understand that person, you know. So that's really important, having those boundaries and understanding each person. That's really important. And so you do sales as well. Sales is huge as well. Like if you can't sell something, that doesn't matter what idea you have, you know, it's not going to work if you can't sell it. You could have the best, and that was where we fell down in our sales and marketing. And so it's early. I know it's still early days. So how are you looking at the sales side of things? What sort of methods? How are you going to try and sell it?
Yeah. So based on my experience, what I've realized is personalized sales is the best. So making sure you understand that person, what their communication style is, understanding what value they see out of something. I always ask people at the beginning, like why are we having this meeting? So these are in past experiences, and they spell it right out to me, and I'm like, great, now I'm just going to align my pitch to exactly what you're saying. And because you've got to understand your customer, and I think the more we start to learn about what our customer is looking for and like their key pain points, then we'll be able to frame it in a really effective way. In terms of what we're tangibly doing to start selling it, we're wanting to partner with run clubs. Running is absolutely blowing up in Australia right now. Everyone and their dog is running. I
do bike rides on Saturday, and I see more and more and more runners all the time in clubs, and you know, they get in my way.
I know.
Get out of my way. Get off the bike path.
It's so timely, our solution, and we've got to leverage that, because I think what I've realized as well, you can have an incredible solution, but if it's not the right time for the market, you can get really caught up on having to educate people on like why this is an important solution. Even if you know it's an important solution, it just makes your life, it's an uphill battle.
Try selling VR in 2017.
Right, until no one knew what it was.
That was ours. Yeah. No, totally agree with that. So yeah, really good timing. All these run clubs happening now, and so what else do you do in your spare time?
Yeah, what else do I do? I'm a surf lifesaver.
Right.
It's so random. I've met a lot of startup people that are volunteer surf lifesavers as well.
That's interesting.
I've met them around Fishburners so many times, and I'm like, do I know you? And it's just, it's funny because obviously we all look like sort of washed down seals when we see each other on the beach, whereas obviously people sort of suit up sometimes in events. So that's one thing I do. I also am really passionate about like women getting into the business space. I'm the vice president of the Women Entering Business Society. And I think what I've realized is a lot of women have incredible talents, but they feel uncomfortable putting themselves out there and being really vocal about it. Whereas I remember listening to a panel, and the panelist was saying to us, you know, a man would tick one of the boxes and he'd go for it and he'd be so confident, and a woman would tick like 8 out of the 10 and be like, oh, I don't want to go for it because I probably won't get it, or like I don't have all those ticks. And sometimes it's just about being confident, being sure in yourself. You don't necessarily have to know everything. I mean, life's a learning journey. If you're sort of like taking on opportunities that are where you're already at or where you're actually better than, you're not going to learn from them. And so it sort of defeats the purpose of it.
Imposter syndrome?
Oh, imposter syndrome. And it's actually funny. I have a really funny relationship with imposter syndrome. I also do Toastmasters, and which is a public speaking organization, and
it's not about cooking toast.
Not about cooking toast, no.
Yeah.
And one of our speakers was talking about imposter syndrome and saying, you know, how bad it is and like how you've got to empower yourself and, you know, be strong in your sense of self, which I completely agree with. Yeah. But I actually think it can really motivate you as well. I would say pesky imposter syndrome pops up in my life all of the time, but it actually sort of propels me on because it makes me realize, yeah, there's a lot of things I could be doing better, and you've got to have that growth mindset. And so I think you can actually use it to your advantage. Everything can be used to your advantage and looked at in a positive light. It's all about your perspective on things. And so I think just that mindset switch is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it is all about mindset. No, that's some great advice. So, obviously the startup world, I mean, you're doing a lot of things. You're involved with so many. Is there anything else you're involved with that we haven't talked about?
What else am I involved in? I mentor a lot with ActiveMate. I also mentor my Toastmasters club, and because I think giving back is probably the best thing you can do in this world. I watched my father for 30 years be the CEO of a charity, and all he did was give back. And I think that's one of the most incredible things you can do, because the impact you make on other people, you don't even have to be on this earth anymore, and like your impact is still propelling on across the universe, which I think is such an amazing thing. And I think at the end of the day, the people are like what matter, and sort of like, it's not just about like building connections and networking. It's about like doing good for people. And then maybe one day, if the time is right, they'll be able to do good for you as well. But being okay if that doesn't happen. And for the other things I do, I also have a dog. Her name's Bella. Okay. She's the love of my life. I think a lot of my friends at boarding school, really different upbringing. Some of them live in the bush. A lot of them have parents that had them really young. So a lot of them actually have children now, which is crazy for me because I couldn't imagine being a mum right now. It's far from anything I would want to do right now. And I think it's really interesting seeing how people's environments can sort of influence them. And if people want to have kids, I love that for them. But I think there's a time and place for it. And if you put yourself in the best position in life, you can give the most to kids. And that's really where I want to be. So I would be more than happy to have kids in like my 40s. I would not mind at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, there's some really slight tweaks in life when you have kids. I'm just kidding. Like everything in your life changes, your whole focus. But yeah, look, if you're doing something good and helping people and giving back, that actually helps you as well. Because that's a lot of people feel a bit depressed because they really focus on themselves, and I feel so bad. But if they actually start giving back and helping others, then that's actually the key to make us feel good, So it's really interesting what you say.
I agree. I mean, you get a lot out of like doing good, and you don't have to look at it in that perspective, but it can be a really nice thing. And again, like my favorite value is kindness, because you never know how someone's day is going. And so to always just be kind to people, you never know what's going on in someone's life. A lot of people, on face value will be quite secretive of those things, which is totally fair enough. And so to think that you can say some things to people, I think on the other hand, like, because I'm really conscious of that, sometimes I'm not a direct communicator whatsoever because I'm so conscious of people's feelings. Yeah. But I think there's great power in kindness. I mean, kindness is free. It costs you nothing to be kind to people. Absolutely. And you could change someone's day for the better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it just reminds me of a story that I heard. There was a guy in the subway in the US, and he had these little kids, and the kids were just running wild everywhere, and he just seemed to be just sitting there not doing anything. And someone just got fed up and said, "Mate, just control your kids. What's going on?" And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but my wife died this morning," or something. You just never know, do you?
Never know.
No, I know.
Yeah, and even that like angry person that might be road raging you or something, who knows what's happened in their day. And I always say it to myself, you know, it's not that deep. At the end of the day, like if someone road rages at you, you're probably just going to go home and not think about them again anyway. So it's not worth your time and energy and effort. I think a lot of people just want a response out of people and sort of don't give them that, you know, if they want to go and be unhappy, that's fine on them.
Yeah. So, so you're mentoring young people, and like, what do you say to them if they do want to enter the startup world? I mean, look, let's face it, it's not easy, right? And young people that have less connections as well. Connections are really important. I mean, obviously, being in different organisations like your own can help. So, what do you say? You know, how do you work with these young people to start in the space?
I usually say to them, like, try and think of yourself in 10 years from now. And now let's work backwards, because a lot of them have the option, do I go to corporate? Do I go to startups? Do I do this or that? Like, there's a lot of options out there when you think about it. And so I usually say you have to do things that align to you, and you have to try things out to know it's not for you. I'm a big believer in doing things. You'll never know if you don't try as well. My favorite sort of motivational speech by Denzel Washington, he says, I don't know if you've ever heard of it before.
Yeah, I think so.
You've heard of it? Yeah. And he says, you know, imagine you're on your deathbed and all of these ghosts come around your bed, and they say, you know, we came to you because we could have made you great, and they're the ghost of the potential you never took. And then he looks at the camera and says, how many ghosts will be around your bed? And I think that propels me a lot on as well, because I'm like, I don't want any ghosts. And I sort of try and share that with them without sharing that slightly morbid story with the students, because the thing is, like, when you're 80 or something, you're going to think to yourself, I mean, you're not going to think to yourself, oh, thank gosh, I didn't try that business idea, so I didn't embarrass myself in front of Jerry and Tom and Sarah, because who are they? They're probably not even any relevance to you anymore.
Exactly.
So it's sort of like, you've just got to take the opportunities. You have to be open-minded. You have to have a growth mindset, and you have to be okay with failing. I wrote like an article on LinkedIn, and it was a highlights reel of my year, and I was reading it and I was like, hang on a sec. There was a lot of things in between that didn't really go to plan.
That's what this podcast is about.
And did not go right. And I said, like, really candidly and honestly at the end, like, there was actually a lot of things that did not make this highlight reel, but they sort of taught me to get up, try new things, dust myself off, because that's what you've just got to do. You've got to be open to that happening.
So give us the biggest one. What was the biggest fail?
Biggest fail. I'd been working towards the Adecco Group has a CEO for 1 month program, and for months I'd been applying. Over 4,000 people applied, and I made it to the top 10. And I had practiced so much. I put it all on the line. I was really confident with myself, and of course I didn't get it, and I was so upset. And I think you need times like that again to pick your things up, learn from it, reflect, dust yourself off, look around at the horizon again, because there's always other opportunities around the corner. I ended up doing some incredible things during that time. That would have been the 1 month internship with the CEO of the Adecco Group. And it was only when I finished that month and had these incredible experiences that I realized, you know, there's always another opportunity around the corner. You just have to be open to taking it and keep your eyes open that those things are around. And honestly, I still sometimes ponder on it sometimes, and I have realized, you know, it's okay to be upset if you don't get things. It's a part of life. You know, things don't always go your way, but as long as you're okay with trying new things, then you'll absolutely find something else that is meant for you. Yeah,
exactly. And it's interesting because when I interviewed your co-founder, Arthur, he was saying when he first applied for StartMate, he didn't get in. And one of the guys that got in, he did a video with doing a backflip. And so then he said the next time he applied, and while he was doing his triathlon, and he got in, they said it's one of the best videos that they've seen. So it just shows you, you know, like,
I mean, I think everything happens for a reason. I mean, myself, on the other hand, I'd actually forgotten to apply. I'd been sent a reminder email to finish my application. It was closing in an hour. I was in my pajamas. I was working from home. I had my dog's hair covered all over me. I went, you know what? Let's just do it now. And I got up. Not my best work, I must say. My best work. But the thing is, like, it was obviously meant to be. Because I ended up getting my job at Fishburners through interviewing with my manager here through the ActiveMate program. I met my co-founder there, and I was actually really overcapped at the time. Like, that reason of me just going, oh, stuff it, I'll just do it, was because I was like, I actually have no time for this. I don't think I can do this. But then I ended up doing it, and was single-handedly probably one of the best decisions I made last year.
Wow. There you go. And from that flowed all this other stuff.
And that's how I'm here. I was working in corporate last year, and I loved my job there. I loved it so much. I was working for an incredible organisation, a not-for-profit aged care called Widden. And I think I would have been there for a really long time.
Yeah.
CEO was incredible. My manager was incredible. The team was amazing. But sometimes it's like sort of a sliding door moment. Like, I just got that email that I'd been accepted. I didn't even know what I'd signed myself up for. And that's happened to me multiple times, that I've just signed up for things because I'm just someone that is always open to opportunities.
You're just like Arthur. I call him the just do it guy. He just does stuff. So you're very similar like that.
Absolutely. And it all paid off. And the thing is, they don't all pay off, but I think you better your chances. The stats go up if you try enough times. And so you've just got to, I always say this at Fishburners, because we're a really lean team as well. So a lot of it is, all the community things have been led by me. And I say, I've just been throwing things on the wall. And then the thing that sticks, I'm like, okay, let's double down on that one. That's obviously working, but you've just got to try it. Because otherwise you won't find the best outcome.
Yeah. Same with a startup, right? You just got to try and do things and do and learn from that. Well, so what's next for Keriana?
It's funny, my other co-founder, Adam, actually asked me that question last night. And the thing is, I'm actually a really chilled person. I feel like someone would look at my LinkedIn and maybe think I'm very structured and orderly. But I just go where I feel like I'm learning and growing. There's no direct path, just like the ActiveMate sliding door moment. There was no real strategy behind it or being intentional. It was just something came up, and you've got to be open-minded to those things. And I have that perspective now, even doing this podcast, you know what, why not? Why not have a conversation about these things? Because you have to be open-minded to them. And so in terms of next step, there's not really any next step. It's let's just continue on this journey and see where it takes me. And I'm sure if, my values align with the options I'm choosing, that's probably the best option.
Yeah, just waiting for the right doors to open up. Awesome. Absolutely. I'm sure many of them will.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I mean, I always like to say, just trust the process, because you've just got to trust the process. Don't think about it too much, because life will happen anyways, and because it has a funny way of doing that either way. So you've just got to trust it.
That's some really, really good advice. And so ending on that, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for giving me access to the Fishburners podcast studio. It's been wonderful having you sort of had me because we're at Fishburners, but it's been wonderful interviewing you, and it's great to see young people doing all these amazing things, and wishing you great success with your career and also your startup, ActiveMate.
And it's fantastic having experienced founders like yourself working in this space, teaching other founders. And because as you said, you wanted to create this podcast because you wish you had a resource like this when you were building your startup. So I think it's fantastic that you're addressing that problem head on.
Thank you. I just think back to 6 years ago and all the problems and the inexperience that I had. I don't count myself as an expert, but I interview, founders, and people can learn from their stories. Everybody will relate to different stories, and just as they will to yours as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming in today.
Okay, thanks, Keriana.